Let's do this. Welcome, everybody, to the N Word for Nerd podcast. I'm your host, Jason, here with my co-host, Jason, the Duke of all nerds. How's it going, Jason?
It's going great. It's another beautiful day in paradise.
All right. As always, I know you guys are coming here. You were waiting for just what we always hit on. We have our top 10 list today. Our top 10 list is
Top five.
Yes, top 5. Yes, I gave us 10. Boy, man, that tells you where my brain is. That's how hard I had to calm down to make my list of 5. But we're going to do top 5 Black superheroes in our opinion. And so, as always, Jason, I'm going to give you the floor first. What is your number 5?
Number 5. All right. Don't fight me on this. It's just the way it is. Number 5 for me is Black Panther. Okay. And in fact, he just barely made this list. And the reason why is because before, Chadwick Boseman broke his foot off in it, Black Panther was kind of like the white guy's version of what black people like.
Okay.
It's like, what do black people like? Africa. Okay, yeah. He could be a guy from Africa. That's cool. I love that kind of representation, but I have never been to Africa, even though my ancestors are from there. That really has no sort of representation for me as an African American. But then Chadwick Boseman came along with Ryan Coogler in their movies, and they made a cultural masterpiece using Black Panther. So that's why he's number 5 in my list.
Okay. All right, let me go ahead. I'm gonna go to my number 5. Then we'll play tennis on this one.
Time. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So my number 5 is Blade. So it's gonna be a trend in my list for my whole list is going to be about how they impacted my life. So my number 5 is definitely good old Blade. I mean, and I'll be real with you, it's Wesley Snipes.
Yeah,
it's the first Blade, especially the second Blade. Like, that's what got me into it. That and the Spider-Man animated series when Blade showed up on that in the cartoon for a couple episodes. But yeah, no, Blade has just always been dope to me. Just a good character, good mythos, and Blade can be Blade without having to be black. And that's what I like about him a lot, is that you could put any race on Blade and it still works, but it just happened to make it even cooler that he was a black vampire that could walk out in a day and beat the fuck out of people.
Also, Blade started this whole revival of superhero movies, man.
Facts.
He was the first to go to the box office, have a hard R on that sucker, and everybody sat and watched that gun. This was awesome. It even had bullet time before The Matrix.
Yes. Come on, preach. When I had this argument with people like frown their nose up at me when I say that. And I'm like, no, don't give me fucking Raimi Spider-Man. Don't give me fucking, what's the name? The Molesters X-Men.
The Molesters X-Men.
Yeah, fucking Blade. Blade started and kicked it off and revigorated superhero movies. So really, black people revigorated superhero movies.
And then Guillermo del Toro on the second one, directing the second one,
loved it.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
So good. All right, you're number 4, Jason.
Number 4. This is going to be I think it's pretty obvious. It's going to be Storm. Also one of those characters where it was like, okay, what do black people like? Africa again. Okay, but she was pretty much our first female black superhero. Mm-hmm. She's also one that's probably the most widely known because of our X-Men, the animated series in the early 90s. Even though in the more recent stuff that they've had her in, she's not been depicted very well. But in that original X-Men comic book or series, she was probably one of the best characters next to Wolverine, obviously. But she's the OG princess. She's a goddess. Come on, she's great. So number 4 will be Storm.
Okay, so I actually have to admit, my number 4 was actually Storm as well. So when you said it, I was like, yes. But I'm gonna throw a curve, a little small one. I'm gonna do, and I guess I don't know if we're gonna consider her black or not. Let's do an honorable mention. I'm gonna change my 4 to Gaia from Captain Planet.
She even a superhero?
Hey,
I guess so.
I'm a rock with her. She was like Mother Earth. It was voiced by Whoopi Goldberg in the beginning seasons.
Dude,
and then it kind of slowly, her tan started going away and got, I think she got voiced.
As the show went on, she became a little bit brighter.
I want to say she even got voiced by, I think, Margaret Kidder, I think later on. I'll double check that as we go on through the list, but So my number 4 initially was Storm, but just so we can keep some diversity in it, I'm gonna go Captain Planet's Gaia because she was voiced by Whoopi Goldberg. I know that's what made me consider Darth Vader too, because he was voiced by James Earl, but I figured I wouldn't go that far.
We said superheroes, sir. Not genocidal maniacs.
Tomato, man.
We have diversity in our all-black character lists. All right.
So who's your number 3?
Number 3. Okay, number 3 is I'm going to totally cheat. I'm going to lump 3 characters into the slot. And these characters are Luke Fox, Tim Fox, and then also Duke Thomas. And these characters are basically a part of the Bat family. You know, Luke Fox is Batwing. Tim Fox becomes the future state's Batman. And then Duke Thomas is a Signal, also used to be a former Robin, as it was. And the reason I put these characters in as number 3 is because this is what DC needs to do. And this is one of the things that I love about DC is they can add in characters that are great, that are diverse, without having to replace their older characters. And I always think, for me, as a great way to put more diverse characters in, is to start with the Bat family, because they don't have to have superpowers. They're just regular people who are badasses. You know, they don't have to come from Krypton or from Themyscira. They can just be picked up off the street and be made into superheroes. So, like, why not have more Black people in the Bat family? So that's why I picked these 3, because they're Black dudes who can fucking kick ass.
Also,
they don't need no powers.
It going to your Tim Fox thing. I like the fact that his Batman mask does cover up his mouth.
Yes.
so
you don't know he's Black.
yes. And guys, when I told somebody that, they were like, "What does that even matter?" I'm like, if I was writing a Black character that was going to be a vigilante, replacing a guy that people know is white, as a Black man, I would damn sure make sure that you couldn't know that I was Black.
Yeah.
Like that was common sense. And if you wrote the character any other way, I would have been like, bullshit. Because no Black man would have went out there perpetrating as a white man and let people find out he's not Black, that he's Black.
And also, if you think about it, if you were to make like Bruce Wayne to be Black, you know, and he's like a billionaire Bruce Wayne, and all of a sudden Black Batman comes on the scene, you're gonna be like, "That's Bruce Wayne." right. That's Bruce Wayne. Ain't none of these other Black guys having no money. That's Bruce Wayne right there. They're gonna pick him out. Like, in this way, if Bruce Wayne is white, they're like, it could be any white guy. I don't know, but Black dude, that's Bruce Wayne.
Absolutely. All right, so then we're on number 3. So then my number 3 is Icon. I'm gonna roll with Icon here. And it's funny, before the show, we were just talking about Icon and his kind of story and background on that. So Icon is a character originally with Milestone characters originally. I think DC Comics eventually ended up buying them. And actually, the most famous person out of this is on my list for later on, which I'm pretty sure he made your list too. I'm almost positive he might have made your list.
Let's see. Who knows?
Right. So I'm gonna go with Icon in there. And one of the beautiful things about his story is, like you had mentioned too, Jason, that, you know, Icon's story is pretty much similar to Superman's. Alien comes to the planet, but he comes to the planet in like Civil War era America. And so he grows up as a Black man in Civil War era America. But one of the things I like about that, because I don't want to take away from everybody who wants interested in reading, because I think it's a great read. But I think one of the biggest things that for Icon that really shaped me a little bit when I was reading Milestone comics back in the day, Icon's a Republican.
Yeah.
He's conservative Republican Black superhero. And they talk about that in the books when him and I want to say it's Rocket sometimes would bang heads, and like they don't hide it from it. They don't make them seem like, you know, and I don't want to use any derogatory terms for conservative Black Republicans, but they never tread that way. And when they do tread that way with him, the comeback or the justification for why he feels is relatable for anybody that's Black. Yeah. So I think that's a very hard thing to do, to make a sympathetic figure out of a Black conservative Republican superhero, but they do a great job. That comic book does a better job of it than in reality.
Basically.
So, like, Candace Owen needs to pick up that book and read a chapter out of that and go, "Oh, this is how you get people to relate to my plight and figure out why I feel the way I feel."
South Carolina, was it Tim Scott? Is that dude from South Carolina?
Yeah. Oh, Tim Scott, yes. I make shipment to him.
It's like, okay,
ship
it's
the comic
okay.
book.
You can be conservative. I get it. Not at all. We don't always have to agree on stuff, but sometimes I can rein it in a little bit. All right,
just a bit, just an inch. But all right, so let's go on to you, Jason.
All
What
right. So
is
number 2, as you guessed it, for me is Static. Like Milestone did a lot for DC in general. Like they ended up hiring Dwayne McDuffie. He was a part of their animation team. So the New Adventures of Superman, the Justice League show before Dwayne McDuffie died, was a lot of his storylines and creations were a part of DC. And I would argue that Static is probably the most famous black superhero, at least in the 90s he was, because of his cartoon of his cartoon iteration, which I know I was watching every Saturday morning. He's just awesome. He's he's not only a black teenager that's growing up in a not so safe area, but he's not just the typical like black thug. He's a smart, intelligent kid. He knows right from wrong, which is great, but he knows that his neighborhood is dangerous, but he's not trying to like be better than everybody else. He doesn't think he's better than everybody else, and he's just trying to do what's best for his neighborhood, which is always great to see the character. I love Static. He's the best. Yeah, and Milestone in general was revolutionary, not just for black comics, but for as I said, for comics in general, because Dwayne McDuffie was the GOAT. So number 2, Static.
Absolutely great choice. Static was my number 2 as well. So in essence of always, because I always want to try to add, especially when we do these kind of segments where we're talking about diversity and things, because there's going to be a lot of people that may not know these characters. So I'm going to bring one. I'm going to switch out my number 2 because we picked it, and I'm going to change that in for Blue Marvel.
Oh,
Blue Marvel.
Man, those are my honorable mentions list.
Yes, Blue Marvel. I'm going to bring them on in here. So the great thing about Blue Marvel, or let's say the interesting thing about Blue Marvel is a retcon. And so when I say retcon, people don't know what that means, is that they basically took the character and fit him into the timeline and as if he always existed, but just nobody mentioned him until now. So Blue Marvel, basically Adam Brochure, smart, intelligent brother, has his powers. I mean, his powers pretty much rival like the Sentries and Supermans and all them real strong. Yeah, he's struggling. And so he was one of the original superheroes back in the day, but then America found out he was black. So this is back in the really, really racist era, found out that he was black, and so he can no longer superhero because the white people were basically like, I hate to say it, they rather die than be saved by a nigga. So it's a piece. So he goes into hiding, and the Shield and everybody covers him up and erases all the things about him and his identity, blah, blah, blah. So no one ever talks about him again. And then in modern day Marvel, I believe it's Tony Stark, maybe, if I'm correct. I got to remember it again, but I believe it's Tony Stark realizes that this guy exists and something's going on and they need his help. And that's what brings him back into the fold. But Blue Marvel, he was on my honorable mentions as well. But again, we're gonna do diversity. We might as well do it to the win. And I guarantee you, we both had the same number 1. But if we do the same number 1, I'm gonna keep it because
I already
know we got the same number 1. And guys, just so you know, we don't script this show, so I'm finding out his top 5 on the fly. But I guarantee you, we probably had the same number 1. So go ahead, Jason.
Let's see. We're going to number 1.
Yes,
my number 1. I don't know. My number 1 is John fucking Stewart.
100%. My number 1 as well. Yep.
Look, he's I think he might have been DC's first black character. I believe he predates Black Lightning by a couple of years. I might be wrong. Please fact check me on that if you want. But I think his best sort of depiction has come in with that Justice League the Animated Show, where it's so easy, especially when we're in the 90s and the early 2000s, for black people, especially black men, to fall into caricature. They're usually, in a lot of the movies and things like that, are always like silly characters. They're always either like the damn straight, that's whack kind of guys, or they're the magical Negro who's only there to like support the white guy's growth. John Stewart is not that dude. He is calm. He's collected. He's stoic. He is serious. He's a professional. He takes his job as Green Lantern seriously, far more seriously than Hal Jordan ever did. All right. He is like he's always the grown up in the room, even when like you're in the room with Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman. He's the guy. They're just like, "Is this cool? Is this cool, John?" He's like, "Yeah, let's go. Let's go along with that." All right. And also the number one reason why he's the best Green Lantern is he's the only one that never gets clowned by Batman. All right.
Right. Right.
Hal Jordan gets painted. Batman paints himself yellow to beat Hal Jordan's ass. Guy Gardner gets knocked out in one punch. Kyle Rayner gets the Batman has his plans and he gets stolen by Ra's al Ghul and Kyle. John Stewart's the only one he never fucked with because he's a respectable dude. Like he is the absolute epitome of black superheroes in my opinion. He's not out there shucking and jiving just to make white people feel good. He's out there being a professional. He's out there doing his job as the best he can. And he's looking damn good doing it as well. Number one, John Stewart, by far.
Look, I'm not even going to spend much more time on it than you said because you hit it perfectly on the head. For everybody our age, he is the first legitimate, uncompromising, like, I put it this way. When you think of a black man in America that is about his business and handling it, John Stewart is that guy. So he's the first black comic book character I remember seeing on TV, on the cartoon, that was just unapologetically black and just dope.
Yeah.
Like even episodes of Justice League when he goes back to his hood and his neighborhood and he got all the respect. And like it was just like, yeah, for people that are younger, when you watch the Luke Cage series on Netflix and how Luke Cage is treated in his hood once he gets his name, that was John Stewart for us. Like it was. He goes
back to the barbershop, like, "Oh, John, what's
up?" right. So yeah, I'm with you. That's why I figured we had the same one because yeah, like I could throw somebody in, but it'd be disrespectful to John Stewart. He is the number one black superhero for me. I think for most people, I think the Lantern Corps that is supposed to be HBO Max is supposed to be doing. Hopefully, he's a feature and a highlight in it. He doesn't have to take a second seat to Hal Jordan and all the other. I mean, Hal's the only one he should take a seat to a degree, just because Hal's the most popular.
That's only
yeah. But popular by name value. Hal's probably the most popular by name value, and they make Hal go through shit all through the comics. So a lot of it's self-imposed, but they make him go through a lot in the comics. So yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. Shit.
I also have to say, for also John Stewart's backstory is also fairly different from other black characters' backstories as well. Even though like he's from Detroit, which don't get me wrong, black people are from Detroit. It always seems that whenever they create a black character, they're either from Harlem or from Africa or from some inner city area. Even though we're from all over the country, all over the world, really.
Right.
But unlike Luke Cage or the Falcon, who are black African American superheroes, John Stewart was never in a gang. He was never a pimp. He was a soldier. He became an architect. Like he was the anti-stereotype for a black man, which is also refreshing to see. It's just like the black life is not a monolith. Not all of us had to deal with gang violence. Not all of us grew up in the hood. Some of us take different paths than the traditional stereotype of what black people are. And John Stewart is one of those people who took that different path, or not even different path, just another path, right?
Right.
That is just so refreshing to see for me, especially as a black man growing up in America. So
absolutely. So guys, I mean, this episode is gonna be black as hell. So if you're not ready for that, I'm saying like I may throw on the CB4 clip. I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, because this episode is gonna be black as hell. So going to our new segment that we started last week. It's time for Geek News. So starting off with Geek News, the first one we have is this is one of those things that I say, no duh, like really. Sony is going to connect Tom Holland's Spider-Man to the Venom movies. Really, Sony? You had to announce that? You own all the characters. What do you think about that, Jason?
Well, they should have done that before they made the Venom movie. That's what they should have done. Like, I love Tom Hardy as a actor. I liked him in the movie as in the Venom movie. I did not like Venom as a movie. And it's one of the main reasons is because there's no Spider-Man. And like for me as a comic book geek, Venom is not as interesting without his connection to Spider-Man. Like it's great that he has like, I mean, if they make him a good guy from the jump, his whole redemption arc to becoming his anti-hero is just null and void. So like,
right.
I just can't get down with this, with Sony trying to make these villains as main characters without the reason why they're villains and make them interesting in the first place. So great, Sony, you did the bare minimum. Good job. Or you're going to do the bare minimum. Good job.
Well, speaking of people that are doing things to get all the money, because you know who has all the money? Disney and Marvel have all the money. And you know what they do? They make sure they get all of our money. It is being rumored and possibly almost confirmed that 2023 will have 5 Marvel movies in that year. Jason, can we handle that kind of Marvel overload? Will our heads explode, or we just decided we get a Marvel exhaustion? What will it be?
A little bit of both. Like by December, I might be like, oh man, I'm tired of these Marvel movies, but I'm still sitting in the theater watching them. So I hope that what's the guy's name? Kevin Feige is a little bit better of a producer than Kathleen Kennedy is, and not oversaturate us with Marvel. But with that being said, he's also given us fan-centric sort of movies thus far. Mm-hmm. And whereas, regardless of where you sit on how much you like the latter trilogies of movies or latter movies of the Star Wars, a lot of them have kind of fell flat for fans. So if Kevin Feige keeps doing the thing and keeps making good movies, 5 movies is great. If he just kind of phone a few in, don't make things that you're not passionate about. So I will be quietly reserved that this will be a positive thing rather than a negative. But I won't be like sad if it comes out to be bad, because I'd be like, this is kind of what they're gonna drive everything into the ground eventually.
Right. And speaking of driving everything into the ground, our next one, which I can't even say it, they're taking the concept, flipped it on his head, inserted a little energy into it, and I feel like every season they just get a little more, they up it up a little more with nostalgia and with craziness. So season 4 of Cobra Kai has announced the infamous Terry Silver will be involved in this episode, in this season of it. For those who don't remember Terry Silver, he is the one that took over for Creedy after, what is it, Karate Kid 2? Yes, was it 2? I'm pretty so.
3 was. So, keep going. Yes. I'm sorry.
No. So he took over for 2. So Terry Silver is going to be back in the building, I guess, to help Creedy, take down Johnny Lawrence more again. Who knows? But I'm here for it. Jason, what say you? Are you here for Cobra Kai season 4 with Terry?
This is what's so great about Cobra Kai is the fact that, Ralph Macchio, and I can't remember the other dude's name, they are involved in the show. This is their baby, basically. This is their legacy. So they are super into making this the best thing that they possibly can. This isn't like a cynical, I mean, it probably for Netflix is a cynical cash grab, but for the people who are actually making it, this is their passion. Ralph Macchio hadn't had a job since Karate Kid. He needs this. He needs this to be good. All right. And that's why it is good, because they have passion for it. So, I'm in for it. I'm all for it. I love nostalgia. It's great.
I always wonder if this Cobra Kai decision came from I don't know if you watch How I Met Your Mother, but like one of the characters, Barney in there. I mean, yeah, I used to assume that everybody watched it. Everybody was like, "Who watches that shit?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, sorry, I don't watch it either." What am I talking about? But the character Barney on there always talks about the Karate Kid, and he always talks about Johnny Lawrence is the Karate Kid because he was the kid that knew karate, not the punk from New Jersey that just learned a couple of moves and like whatever. So I always wonder if Cobra Kai was birthed out of that skit, because he used to talk about Johnny Lawrence being the good guy in that movie. So
I give it here or there. Because as we were talking earlier, Johnny Lawrence was just a dude who had a girlfriend. He wasn't a bad guy. He was an asshole teenager, as most of us were asshole teenagers were. And you see somebody hitting your girlfriend, you're going to be upset with them. Did he handle it in the right way? No, but who handles things in the right way when they're teenagers? Nobody does. So, he's not a bad guy in my book. And also, Ralph Macchio was like 45 when he shot Karate Kid, so he wasn't really a child. But which brings me into Karate Kid, the movie with Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan. Completely racist because there's no karate in that movie whatsoever. It took place in China. They were practicing kung fu. Who let that go by? Like, who was like, yo, we should name this Karate Kid?
I thought in the Asian marketing version of it, it's called Kung Fu Kid in the Asian market, I believe. I think for the US, because they wanted branding, they kept it the Karate Kid.
Like, I would expect, like, maybe, I know Jackie Chan is actually, Chinese, but maybe he was going to play like a Japanese person, which would be pretty racist too. But and teaching him karate, which would counteract the kung fu. Nope, they're all learning kung fu in China, which is what they do in China, and they still name this movie Karate Kid, which is karate is a traditional Japanese martial arts, and it's just like there was not one person of color in that boardroom when they made that decision. So,
100%. Come on, man. You know that.
That's really frustrating me.
All right. And then the last thing I have for Geek News, which people probably already know, Netflix is putting the cast together for their Sandman series. It's going to be animated series. Oh, go ahead. Jason's ready. Go ahead.
Well, we're going to talk about this in another segment, but they cast somebody for Death.
Yes.
There's a little bit of controversy over this fictional, immortal being a person of color now. And also, which I don't understand, they also cast a non-binary person as Desire, and some people are mad at that. And like, did you even read Sandman? Like, Desire was completely non-binary in a time where we didn't know what non-binary was. Like,
right.
Y'all just complaining just to complain.
Because I guess Death has to have a proper color, I guess. All right. So that ends up Geek News for us. Hopefully you guys, everybody enjoyed that. So like I told you guys earlier, this is probably going to be the blackest episode. Probably not the blackest. It's going to be one of the blackest episodes we probably ever do in our lifetime with the N-Word for Nerd podcast. So with people who do not know I struggle with how to phrase this, but the 100-year remembrance of the biggest terrorist act on American soil. We're talking about Tulsa. Oh, I mean, it's the biggest by death numbers and etc. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Because I don't want to use the word anniversary. I feel like anniversary is a celebration. So I just want to say the 100-year remembrance of Tulsa, Oklahoma, where it was basically a black town. Everything, black people ran the schools, the banks, everything in there, even had a Black Wall Street set up. And the story goes, angry white people from the opposing town were upset and went in and basically terrorized the area off the lie that some black people had possibly raped or harassed a white woman. Nothing was ever confirmed if that was true or not. And regardless if it was, it does not give you the right to destroy a whole town. But this was in the Jim Crow era. So they went and basically levied this whole town, and we're finally now 100 years later really starting to put some respect in the tragedy on the name of that incident. One of the things I think
learning about it for some people.
Oh, absolutely. And I was going to say, one of the things I think helped push that narrative of people learning about it is that we had two shows recently talk about and hit that subject matter. One was Lovecraft Country, and the other one was Watchmen, or some people like to, when they're haters, call it Wokeman. So with that being said, let's talk about Lovecraft Country and its depiction of Tulsa. I kind of cede the floor to you, Jason, and what are your thoughts on their depiction of it and the series? And we'll just kind of just roundtable talk from there.
All right. So I'm not going to be subtle whatsoever. I think Lovecraft Country, and particularly their depiction of the Tulsa Massacre, is on the same level as like the 16th Chapel. It's a work of art that should be remembered throughout time and shown in schools and taught in art classes. This is probably one of the things that was masterfully done. I talk about crying a lot. I was in full sobbing mode by the end of this episode. This show for me is revolutionary. it has shown me things that, as in my short 37 years of life, have never seen on TV. It has shown me representation that I've never ever had had experience, and it's by far, and it's a travesty because this show doesn't get recognized. I looked at the award season for this year, and there's one mention of Lovecraft Country for best drama picture or best drama show for the Golden Globes. It's not even nominated for an Emmy, and this has been like, to me, like a cultural defining show, like from the very beginning, using like pop culture references from um, John, the Princess of Mars, to Indiana Jones, to other to Lovecraft himself in this show, and then placing black characters in the forefront of it was just, it's I'm speechless how good this is, and like from the very first scene where he's having that dream sequence where Jackie Robinson comes down from the spaceship and kills Cthulhu with a baseball bat and says, "I got you, kid." I was completely sold in. And then they go and they do, a horror show with the Shoggoths and being chased by the mountain monsters. But that wasn't even the scariest part of that episode. The scariest part was them trying to get out of the county, before sundown.
Right.
That's what made me have my heart pumping, even though afterwards there's these giant vampire blood beasts or whatever. This show has done so many things for so many different sort of demographics, from not only just black men like myself, but black women, not our LGBTQ community with Montrose, coming to his realization in a time where it was not good to be gay at all, plus being black, to even
Right.
this one thing that really, really, really resonated with me is, I we talk about this sometimes, that I'm writing a novel. It's about black people, but my mom has asked me, once I finish with this novel, could you ever write a novel, where the main character is a middle-aged African American woman? Because really, we don't really get to see many stories about middle-aged African women. In this show, we have probably one of the best character realizations of a black woman that I've ever seen. It goes into pulp sci-fi. It deals with, history, like the Dominique Malage, the Amazonian warriors. It's just like it hits on every single level, and it's just so good. And I'm surprised that many people have not seen how important this show is. And that's just my humble opinion, but it's great. It's just, and then we get on to the references that they make to the actual history that has happened in this country. From Emmett Till is in this, to obviously the Tulsa Race Massacre, and then we have can't remember the lady's name off the top of my head, but she was the first black woman to ride across the country on her motorcycle. She was famous.
Right.
Josephine Baker, all sorts of stuff was just, peppered into this just to bring this world to being as fully realized for the time frame that they're in as possible. And even though the book was written by a white man, I believe her name is Misha Green, took that source material and brought it to where it was actually something that many black people, not just myself, but others as well, can truly feel as something that was their own. And I loved it for it. And we can go on to Watchmen afterwards, but I feel like even though Watchmen is probably the show that has the most accolades, this show is a far superior piece of work in so many more ways than I just described. It is just amazing. And I hope people will not only see this and study about the Tulsa Massacre, but also about other things that happen that are similar to like Rosewood or Seneca Village, or even here in Georgia, down in Fulton County, called Oscarville, where they chased 1,000 black people out of town, and they stayed like that until 1991. And even to this day, there's not a lot of black people who live up in Fulton County. I was warned about going to Fulton County when I was a kid by my parents, not realizing what had happened there. So, like, it brings so much history to life, and it's just, it's a great show. It's a great remembrance of the past that has not been taught to us, that we are told to get over when we say things like Black Lives Matter, when we say things like, equality for all, justice for all, or even just abolish the fucking police. Because guess what? Who was in that riot when they were murdering people? The fucking police.
Police.
And they've always been like, every lynching that's ever happened, guess who was there? The fucking police. And so, as you can see,
he said he wasn't going to be light about it. And again, hopefully people that are listening respect the honesty and the truthfulness of your statements. I will say with Lovecraft Country, so let's even rewind back before even just this show. Let's rewind to the simple fact that people don't think there is a market for Black science fiction, horror, or fantasy. So let's even just start there. Yes. Like, it's the reason why we don't get cast in those roles, and it's the reason why they don't tell our stories is because they don't think it's a market of it, a market for it.
For just a second, on that point, I have a buddy of mine who went to NYU to study as a screenwriter so he can eventually, make movies one day. And he liked to write basically Black fantasy. In one of his screenwriting classes, he turns in a screenplay for a Black fantasy, and the teacher hands it back to him and says, normally we like to see stories, about Black people, overcoming struggles in the streets and things like that. And this really is not what, movie theaters are looking for. So, like, you told a creator to not create because it's not what you want to see. And but please continue. Go on. That's just
no. You hit right on the head kind of where I was going with it. I was going to say that a lot of us are deterred from wanting to tell our story in a social, entertaining way with allegory because we're pushed away from it because they don't think there's a market for it. Hopefully the shows like ourselves and a lot of shows that I watched that I emulated to even come up with this show, and called the Blerb sphere, the Black nerd sphere, is starting to break those things down. Watchmen and Lovecraft Country are the first things to show you can do this and we will follow. But you got to think about it. Even we just talked about it earlier. Blade, hard R rating superhero movie, black cast, Black hero. Let's be real. The only real villains in there were all white, and it made a ton of money. Black Panther. It hit a billy, yes, because it's Marvel, but it hit a billy because all the Black folks came out. I mean, Black folks were coming in there with dashikis and stuff to go watch Black Panther, who had never saw a Marvel movie before. The market is there for Black entertainment. Bad Boys for Life, I know which is this action, not in the genre, but was the #1 movie of 2020. Now we can say because of COVID, cool, but the numbers don't lie. If you make things to us that's good, interesting, and intelligent, not disrespecting us, we'll go see it. Stop giving us trauma porn. Yeah. And that's what I call it, all the slave movies and all that. Stop giving us trauma porn. If you're going to give us this quote-unquote trauma porn, put it into, like you said, a situation of a sci-fi, of a fantasy narrative that you're correlating things. You hit it right on the head. The scariest part of Lovecraft Country, the whole time, were the white folks. Mm-hmm. With all the monsters and shit that's going around from succubus to everything.
Demon children.
The scariest thing about that show was the white folks in racism. Because you know what? That's what we deal with on a regular day basis. We deal with white folks in racism, even if it's hidden, undercover, subliminal, subconscious. We can't be ourselves. That's why even when you, on our extremely Black show, had to be like, hey, sorry guys, because I'm about to really go in. Like, why should we have to do that? Like, this is a part of us. Right. We are so indoctrinated to do that. It's crazy. And these are shows that are like, like these are people who are placed in these situations, and some of the situations they encounter are because of the color of their skin.
Yeah.
Rather than the color of their skin makes them in these situations. Like, right, yeah. Every slavery movie is because the color of their skin made them in this way. And if for some reason it appeases to people who aren't Black to feel comfortable with watching this type of thing. But when you watch things that are uplifting or showing a true story of Black folks, but putting a twist that makes us relate, then it's too woke. Yeah. It's woke. You go woke, you go broke. So why is it that you want to see us get beat and whipped and destroyed? It gets Academy Awards and everybody praises how great it is. But then things about us that if these were white characters could pretty much almost run the same. It's, you're being too woke. Oh, don't give me racism and the Black plight. Like, Like, because it is a mentality set up in Hollywood, just like you said, we don't want to write or don't want to hear from you when you're actually showing progression and uplifting and whatever. But yet, everybody's argument is, well, why don't you guys just lift yourselves up by your bootstraps and do X, Y, and Z? But you don't show us those images on TV. You don't show us those images on cartoons and movies. Like the fact that Jon Stewart is our number one because of he's just a real ass dude.
He's just a dude.
Yeah, regardless of race, was a real ass dude. This is not our number one. Why? Because he was just a real ass dude. Lovecraft Country, the fact that we love it so much is that these are people dealing with their day to day. And we even get the allegory of one of the characters being able to be white.
Yes.
And she even sees the flaws with having to be white and how it's unnatural to her and how she functions and how she moves in the world and the things that she wants to do, the things that she wants to say. Like,
and even in like the main villain of Lovecraft Country, she's the villain because she's a woman and she has to deal with this. Even as a white woman, she is dealing with the patriarchy of this overtly racist and sexist system, and she's trying to break out from that. Yeah, she's trying to use the blood of black people to do it, but she's trying to break out from the system that is detrimental to her as well. So it's not just like it's all marginalized groups that are suffering in this country. It's not just black people or women. It's black people. It's women. It's LGBTQ plus people. Mm-hmm. It's indigenous people. It's Hispanic people. It's Asian people. It's all being systematically brutalized by the white supremacist system that we've had in place that we haven't had a conversation about ever. When Martin Luther King did it, what he really did was say that we need to have a conversation, and then they shot him for it. We have still not had the conversation. We have still not reconciled all the things, all the trauma of our past. And the thing is, they don't want to. They are actively fighting to not tell true history of this country.
Exactly.
They're actively trying to suppress what has happened. And that is only going to lead to more strife and to more bloodshed in this country until we can reconcile the American dream with the American reality. And these shows, and even shows that don't go into black trauma, shows that show like Black Joy or just having characters that aren't white cisgendered men doing things that would be normally a white cisgendered character is important because it furthers the conversation. And those things are important because it raises us all up. Not just me, not just people that look like me, but all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just the final note on Lovecraft Country, and then we'll switch over to Watchmen. Not only do the stories need to be told, but even for our people, especially people in our age group, and especially younger than us, we're so tired of hearing the same stories about our past. Oh, Dr. King, Malcolm X. Oh, Muhammad Ali. Oh, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks. Like, we're so tired of hearing those stories that sometimes you have to find a creative way to give us the information without quote unquote sounding preachy. Because it's, as much as some white people or other races will turn off from getting the woke talk or the woke stuff, our people turn off from it too, because we feel like everything that deals with us has to be a message. Everything that deals with us has to be some kind of, you got to be serious now. You got to take this. We're putting these things into different genres where we can see it, experience it, internalize it, but then also you can do whatever you want with sci-fi and fantasy. You got, Tick like beating up a bunch of white people with a baseball bat and gets away with it. Like, that wouldn't happen in reality. That don't happen.
You have Hippolyta becoming basically a space god,
Right.
All because she realizes her self-worth.
Right. And so those are the stories we want to see. We want to see things where, I don't know if I'm going to say like where we win at the end, but yes, things where we feel confident that it is a light at the end of the tunnel. It is a brighter world. We are moving to a spot where we are going to become, the greater, the better persons of ourselves, or accept whatever the case may be. If, acceptance or, less of sexism or whatever the case may be, everybody wants to leave with that message of hey, this is where we can go. We're tired of leaving with the message of, well, man, that's our past, and we're still dealing with it today. And it's like, come on, man, give me something more than that. Give me Django. Give me some dude that's shooting down, like, you know what I'm saying? Give me a slave rebellion where the slave don't die at the end. Like, give me some of that.
Speaking of Watchmen, or a movie about Bass Reeves, he's out, this sheriff, this first black sheriff who was in that would be a great movie to watch,
But we won't get it. So let's go and switch gears to Watchmen, and as we go there, so Watchmen they opened their show.
They opened the show.
When I tell you, when they opened their show with Tulsa, I was watching it in my bedroom, and they opened it. I leaned up, got out of bed, got to the edge of my bed, and I started watching because I had never seen anybody be bold enough to tell that story, let alone not even tell that story, but to do it unapologetically so, where it literally just laid it on the line. It showed the brutality, the violence of the terrorism that took place there. And I was incredibly intrigued. And Watchmen did something that I think we just talked about, showing something to us more than just our people losing, blah, blah, blah. Watchmen showed a world in the era of the world where, you know what, maybe we fixed a little bit of this racial stuff, but there's still some bad stuff going on. You know what? A cop can't just pull his gun. He has to ask for permission. You know what? We get to reparations for the descendants of people in Tulsa. Like, we got some things that are progressively honorable to be done, and they showed a world where this could happen and work. And I feel like that was scary to a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people did not like this show. A lot of people who are original fans of either the Zack Snyder version of Watchmen or have read the graphic novel of Watchmen did not like the show. And I believe it's because, well, anybody that watched the Zack Snyder version probably didn't get what this was about in the first place.
Right.
But people didn't really understand that Alan Moore was kind of subverting, conservatism and, basically 80s culture in the Watchmen, the original Watchmen. And in this show, they basically Watchmen-ize the original Watchmen. They subvert the tropes from Watchmen and to make it something that's, palpable for today, for the day's time. Because this came out, I think it was before George Floyd was murdered, but after, Trayvon Martin and Tamir Rice and the countless of other names that we can just list and keep listing forever.
Right.
But when I saw Tulsa 1921, I screamed because, that is something that I'm aware that has happened because, my parents have gone out of their way to teach us, Black history that isn't taught in schools, but it was not something that I would ever thought that someone would that anybody actually knew about, let alone they're going to write, a show about it, and put it as the primary, impetus for a character that was in the Watchmen comic books doing the things that they were doing. And that was really amazing to see that this is what this moment in our history, this moment that was indicatively of Black people, was what started this cultural phenomenon in that universe, because Hooded Justice was the first superhero or vigilante in that universe. Right. And he was a Black man, and that was freaking amazing that they did that. And it was and this show keeps going, especially when you say it's a different world than ours, and they inverted some of the things that would have happened in our real world, but still brought it back that, just because you might have gotten reparations, just because we might have recognized these things happen, we have the flip side where there's going to be people who don't give a shit.
Right,
who don't care to make things better for everybody, who are just still going to be like, no, I like it back when y'all were still on the plantation. I want to go back to that. And that is also kind of what we are dealing with today.
Right.
So, I mean, this show is it's not as I said, it's not one of the shows. It does show Black trauma, but it's not a show about Black trauma, which is also great. And it also made Dr. Manhattan Black, which was fucking phenomenal.
Right. It gave me
and I know it made so many people mad, but it's this dude can literally do whatever the fuck he feels like. Why not let him be Black for a while?
And even I remember that it even gave me feels of Martian Manhunter. In a lot of incarnations of Martian Manhunter, he takes the role as a black man as he walks through the earth.
Usually a black dude.
Yeah, and I when it was revealed that Dr. Manhattan was the husband, I was like, that is dope. Like he like you talked about it. It was just a very good twist. But what it also, and I know you were saying you like Lovecraft Country a little bit more. I did enjoy Watchmen a bit more than Lovecraft Country, only because I did like the fact that this world they had built, we kind of were seeing how it all works. And I got a kick out of the changes in history. Even the Watchmen comic does the changes in it, but seeing the Hooverville, trailer park area, like I love that Robert Redford's the president now, who, a la the, Ronald Reagan and recently Trump situation where you had basically celebrity TV people become the president and all. So I did like that and mirrored that. I also enjoyed that they did sprinkle in a huge discussion about classism and how classism shapes racism.
Yes.
And I thought that was interesting because I get a lot of people, my conservative brothers and sisters that I talk to, they lean so heavily into classism, but yet never really want to change the classist attitude. But that's what they want to talk about. That's their denouncing of racism is,
and what they don't understand is that in this country, race is tied to class.
Absolutely. I always call classism the knucklehead cousin of racism.
Yeah.
Like racism's the straightforward one, the knucklehead cousin is classism. So you kind of, he's a knucklehead, so that's why that happens. And they touched on that a lot. They touched on that class aspect with racism, but then it also goes to things like you said they've subverted the books. Rorschach is a bad guy.
He is a terrible human being. He is literally a person who thinks he's a good guy, but he is not.
But Zack Snyder made him it basically gave him a baby face treatment in the movie. So people didn't read the book, watch the movie, and think Rorschach's a good guy. And I'm like, no, Rorschach is a terrible human being that just happens to do be worse to other terrible human beings.
I think that's it. With Rorschach, people, especially people who actually read the graphic novel, what they think the moral of it was that he was an uncompromising individual. And that is something that is to be admired. But the problem is he was uncompromising in his sexism, in his racism, in his fascism. He was explicitly a fascist. He said it, I am a fascist. That's what he said. And it doesn't mean that Adrian Veidt, Ozymandias was right. They were both wrong. That's the whole thing. It's like this guy who is willing to kill a whole bunch of people just to make it right was also still wrong, as much as wrong as the guy who's like, you shouldn't do that. You should, even though it's already done, I should undermine this thing just because I want to be right. So
right.
Rorschach is a bad individual. Ozymandias is a bad individual. Even True said was like, you're the smartest man in the show. You're the smartest man in the world, and that was the best you could think of.
Right. For people watching on TV, I'm showing the oldest living member of that's still alive from the Tulsa incident, and so she's, I guess, sitting in front of, I believe, Congress and all that, as they were, because they are talking about hopefully the descendants of that getting some kind of compensation, etc. Which 100 years later, they're just now talking about that. So that shows you how long our process of justice and reparations does take. Basically, had to slaughter people for them to even talk about 100 years later. So with that, that's just insane. But going to that point of then Watchmen, also a great thing also about Watchmen is that they upped the sci-fi tropes in this one so much more than I thought. The squid raining, which is a direct thing from the comics that most people who watch the movie won't get. So the squid raining part was just really, really dope. Ozymandias being trapped inside his own statue, really, it's so many good moments in there that's just very sci-fi-ish that I really, really enjoy. But I think also too, let's just shout it out to the Queen, man. You get Regina King up in there doing her thing.
The Queen, Regina King.
yeah. Let's be real. She does her thing, and I know a lot of people didn't like it, but like I said, but we both agree, if you didn't like the new Watchmen, it's because you didn't understand the Watchmen books. You obviously couldn't have understood the Watchmen books and watch the new one and dislike it off some quote unquote wokeness, when again the whole original Watchmen was basically political satire
of being woke.
right, absolutely. But any closing thoughts on Watchmen for you, Jason?
It's another wonderful show. In my opinion, it's when I was watching it, I thought it was a masterpiece, and then I watched Lovecraft Country, and it just so put them both in the museum. I guess would be the thing. One of my things with the Watchmen is that even though we start off with the Tulsa riots, we don't really spend much time there. It's really only like that first 15-minute segment that we have for the Watchmen show, which it's the catalyst for the whole entire show, but we're only there for 15 minutes. Whereas in Lovecraft Country, we are there for a whole entire episode. We are there where characters who already lived through it are going back and reliving their experience and also remembering the horror that they went through at that time. That scene where Jesus, I can't freaking remember the actor's name. Michael K.
Oh, yeah, I can't think of it.
Type it up.
The father.
Yeah. The character's name was Montrose. Omar from The Wire. Where he is sitting there watching the city burning and naming the real life people who have died and naming the real life businesses that burned down and naming the things that actually happened. I was bawling. And then when we get and this is probably the biggest thing about it is that when we get to the part where Letitia tells Tick's grandmother that she's got to die in order for Tick to live. She makes that choice to burn alive with the rest of her family just so her ancestor can someday have a better life. I felt that, because that's what I mean. Maybe they didn't make a conscious choice in doing that, but that's what our ancestors did. That's what my parents did. That's what my grandparents did. They had to eat shit so that I could have a better life, and that's why I guess for me that escalated to the next level. So, and all the other sci-fi shit that happened too.
Again, I'm right there with you. I mean, I think it's hard on this week's show because we agree on a lot of it, and this is one that we probably gonna have a little bit dissension on. We're gonna talk about comic books in general and TV, race swapping characters to, I guess, add more diversity and inclusion into whatever they think is going to make the shows or the situation better. So I'm going to go with my homely, safe, liberal snowflake take. It's going to be very coddling because me and my friends talked about this before, and he was a huge, he hated the whole race swap thing. And because we talked about they got a new Incredible Hulk that's Asian. And he's like, oh, why do you got to be Incredible Hulk? Can't he be like Kung Fu Hulk? Which is kind of racist, but
that's
the point
very
racist. The point he's getting to was make a whole new character. Why does it have to be the next of this X, Y, and Z? And kind of like we talked about earlier, I said, well, DC Characters has had a long line of making the new face the same name as the old face, just with a new face. But I know with this conversation, we're more talking about them taking somebody like recently WB announced that they may possibly look at doing a Black Superman. But not doing the black version of Superman that's in their books, doing Kal-El, Clark Kent, the white guy, as a black guy, and going forward with it. I will say this. I'm not against race swap characters. I'm not saying I'm waving the flag for it, but I do think that because a lot of us weren't allowed to be in those rooms and get the entry levels to create comics in the past, to create a lot of the iconic characters that we talk about today, except for in the Marvel universe, they use a lot of B and C characters. But the A-list characters, the X-Men, the Justice League, etc. Those writers were white. Those creators of these characters were white. So they created themselves or some part of themselves or part of their community or part of their history into these characters. Superman was created by two Jewish people. Why? Because they wanted a man who could pretty much overcome everything because of what Jews were facing at the time in America and in overseas in Germany, etc.
Also, Superman is canonically Jewish.
Yes, that's correct. The reason why I say that I'm fine with it is because of the racism, we weren't allowed in those doors to show our books, to make our books, and to be able to have these iconic characters that trace back to that while back. And the characters we did have from that era, they either made the reasons why we could no longer use them or be produced, or we would make the idea and they would make white people write the stories for these black characters. So for me, I look at it as almost I don't want to say a comeuppance, but almost like a semi-writing the shit, being like, hey, look, the only reason this character is really technically white is because a white man was writing him at the time. If it would have been in this era, this character probably is let's be real, Magneto or Professor X should be black. And I know they're throwing around the idea of Magneto being black in an update of it because they're going to do the Rwanda genocide as Magneto's origin story going forward. That's the thing that's being thrown around heavily in Marvel Comics because the Jewish and Germany Holocaust thing is so far removed. Magneto's going to have to be like 100, 70, 80 years old. Yeah. So they have to update it, and they're using think about doing the Rwanda and making them black. If X-Men was written today, let's say it never existed, yes, a lot of those characters would be black. A lot of those prominent position characters would be black. And so that's why when I think of the race swap thing, I'm not so offended by it because I feel like, again, it is a way to put us in positions and make us look like we talked about, no trauma porn. Put us in a position where we are a black Superman is going to be the best character in DC Comics. They protect him. He has what we call as a writer, what do you call it? Plot armor. He has plot armor all the time. It's great to have a hero that we know ain't gonna be killed off in three issues. So that's my take on the race swap. I'm not against it because I feel like, again, it's just giving us the just due. But also, I'm not around talking about like we need more, characters of color. We need more. Create what you want to create because you're the creator. But I think if the door was open to more diversity back then, we would have more diversity now in our characters, especially in the elite characters. We would have it. So I see my time because I already know you're going to destroy that whole argument, and I'm going to be thinking about this whole week of how to get back at you next week. So Jason, go ahead.
I somewhat would agree with you that, some of these characters should be changed and definitely need to be updated for the world that we live in. There's two types of wokeness for me. There is the one type where people actually care about telling diverse stories and actually are generally interested in having diverse voices and sharing these stories. And the other side is the people who are just trying to make a quick buck. Always the second one will always ring hollow and false, particularly in the Star Wars movies, the recent ones. They were trying to be woke, and yet it just ended up being all about the white dude in the end. So for me, like my personal feeling is this: it's like we've been with Superman, Clark Kent as a white guy for 80 plus years. There's no point to me in changing him into a black guy because it would kind of fundamentally change his character. Because you can't just swap out a white dude who's grown up in Kansas and becoming, a black dude who grew up in Kansas while him having two almost fundamentally different experiences. So just changing it and kind of keeping everything the same is just basically putting Clark Kent in blackface. So for me, would much rather you create a new character and have those experiences be a part of that new character, and he could still be Superman, but he's just not going to be Clark Kent Superman.
Right.
And the thing is, like, that's what DC is kind of, and the comic lines are kind of really good at, is taking the legacy of a character and creating a new character and almost making that just as good, or if not better, than that character that preceded it. For example, Hal Jordan is not the first Green Lantern. He is like the second Green Lantern. Alan Scott was the first Green Lantern, but we all know about Hal Jordan. John Stewart's way better than Hal Jordan, but Barry Allen, not the first Flash. We've always already had a legacy of these characters taking on mantles of different things, of earlier characters, and we can continue that legacy and make these newer characters still have the same sort of goal and heart of the original characters, but they're just different people carrying on that mantle. One of the best examples of this is Miles Morales. He is probably at this point almost, if not as popular as, or more popular than Peter Parker is as Spider-Man, because he's carrying on that mantle. And there's actually creators in the room that understand, how these characters should act and relate to the rest of the world because they are people of color, or they at least talk to people of color. Unlike, those guys back in the 30s who's like, I know black people, I guess this is what they like. So for me, like, there are certain characters that could be swapped out for a different race and not really change anything. Like if they did a Booster Gold movie and they made a black guy Booster Gold, that would probably work because Booster Gold's from the future, and it's probably not a whole lot would change with his character from the future, you know. But you know, making Superman black, that's just like trying to make Clark Kent black. It just rings of like, how can we get the most money out of people? And that seems like it's not trying to tell a story that is relatable to black people. It's just trying to get black dollars. And like the best characters, even though they are representative of the groups that they're from, they don't just tell stories about just, you know, Miles Morales isn't great just because he's black and Hispanic. Miles Morales is great because he's a Spider-Man. You know, we can all relate to his struggles, even though I'm not black and Hispanic, you know, a lot of people aren't. But we can relate to his struggles because he's a good character. And that should be the most important thing. It's not just whether or not he is black or white or whatever. It's whether or not he's a good character. And we can create good characters of color, of different sexualities, different genders. And as long as we are passionate about creating that character. So DC, don't make Superman black just because you want to get money. Make Superman black and use characters that you know. Calvin Ellis is a black Superman. Bring him in and make that movie because you already have people in your stable of writers who are passionate about that character and can make that the best damn character you possibly can. So that's my opinion on that thing. Fuck Superman being black unless you're 100% want to make him black, I guess.
Yeah, and again, like I said, I mean, I figured you would destroy my argument like you just did, so eloquently did. Yes, I agree. Like, if are you using the blackness as a money grab and a way to just get that extra dollar, etc., or let's say reinvigorate the character? It's like an NFL team that's like, hey, we got a new jersey design for this year, and it's like, you're going to have this shit for 1 year, and that jersey is never going to come out of the Raptors ever again. But you're just trying to get that money grab. Yes, it can have a feel of that. I guess for me, if you're going to, let's keep with the Superman example, because that's the biggest thing why the topic was built off of. If you're going to race swap Superman, and like you said, you're going to have him drop in Kansas and Smallville, and let's even say he gets picked up by white parents.
Oh, that'd be terrible.
I feel like it forces you now to have to hopefully forces you, because maybe they won't feel like they have to. Hopefully it forces you to have to tell that story of that disconnect of two white parents raising a black child and now having to deal with possible racism in Smallville that they never knew existed because it was a pretty much all white town.
Yeah.
That's the story I would be interested in here. But like you said, you could do that and not have it be Kal-El. You can have something else do that as well. But as long as you, like you said, as long as you tell the stories that do have some cultural relevance to it, I'm kind of fine with it. But I think, like you said, it gets into the problem now is the mythos, and are people going to be happy with, you know, the story being told from this point of view now and X, Y, and Z? Because I think it's something honorable to tell a story of, which we do have comic books that have told the story numerous times before, of a black man who's fighting for this country and this world, but still gets treated like a black man when he's not behind the cape and the cowl. Like, we know we have numerous stories. I mean, hell, Falcon and Winter Soldier hit on that.
Or Icon, or you know, Blue Marvel.
Yeah. And you're right. And that's what I said. So it's one of those things that goes to your point that there's no reason to race swap them, because you can tell those stories be have characters for it, or you can rewrite a black character's origin story to make those stories work as well. But you did hit on something. And I'm just going to let's run down a list of some of these characters and see if you think their race changing was a money grab, or or you think it's a legitimate character. So
but before we do that, let me also preface and say, you know, all these characters are fictional in the first place. They're not real people. So literally they can be whatever color they want.
Absolutely.
So like, let's also throw that out there. It's like, this is fictional people. Like, don't make a movie about Martin Luther King and make him white, because then someone going to die. All right.
So first one, Riri Williams, as I guess it's technically Ironheart, but she's supposed to be trying to take over for Tony Stark as Iron Man. Cash grab for her being a black woman, or you think that's a legitimate just storytelling device?
Geez, that's a hard one. I think it's legitimate, but they kind of named her after Rihanna too, so I don't. I think it might be a cash grab, but she hasn't really replaced Iron Man as of yet, so I think it's legitimate.
Okay. Kamala Khan taking over the Mrs. Marvel mantle after Captain Marvel left it.
100% legitimate. They have treated that character with so much respect because, especially since she's Muslim and Iranian, and that could easily get into character and stereotypes, and they've not done that. 100% legitimate.
Okay, and then I already think you already hit on that you think Miles Morales is legitimate, so that one is easy. What about Amadeus Cho, who is the new Incredible Hulk?
Well,
I guess
Amadeus
not
Cho
incredible.
Amadeus Cho was his own superhero before he became the Incredible Hulk.
Right.
As you know, like the things that really bother me is like when they take an established character and just change his race without really changing his character. So Amadeus Cho, you know, he was already a part of the Marvel universe, and he decided to take on the Hulk mythos. I mean, all this stuff is cash grabs, but still, I feel like they're taking their time and taking credit to make an Asian man not be just there for the stereotypical reasons. Like, how many times do you see Asian characters be like the strong guy?
That's true. Never. All right, here's a one that I know is similar but a little different. I was gonna say Nick Fury being a black.
Ooh. So
because now for people who don't know the backstory on it, the Ultimate Universe made him black. So it wasn't like they threw him in the regular 616 Marvel and he was black. They started a whole other universe and he's black in it. But what do you feel about that?
Then they threw him in the 616 universe. Well, the Ultimates, it just depends on how much you like the Ultimate Universe. Like when I first read this, I thought it was pretty cool that they made Nick Fury Sam Jackson, because that's legitimately who they modeled Nick Fury off of in the Ultimate Universe, Sam Jackson. And then I also thought it was pretty cool that Sam Jackson was like, yeah, I'll play him in the movie because that's who you base it off of. And then they kind of retconned it into the mainline Marvel universe to have Nick Fury Jr. being black. So like, it seems like they had a more of a plan to this than just let's just change it just so we can be there. But there's a lot of things in the Ultimate Universe where they just change it just to be changing it, and it does not work whatsoever. So, but this is the one that did work.
All right, another one that's going to be a little more difficult. Wally West and Iris West Allen in the Flash show, both being black.
They should still be white. So, like, yeah, okay, and this is probably my brainwashing and my thing of systemic racism or whatever in my own mind. But Wally West is my Flash. All right, I grew up as Wally West being my Flash. He's a redhead. I mean, he's already a minority. He's a redhead. So, like, there is no need for them to make him black other than to have more diversity to this all white show. So that would have been all white people. So no, they could have added more characters. They could have added more characters to it and just kept him the way he was. Because they didn't try to walk it back in the comic books too. They made him black in the comic books and then try to walk it back. So yeah, that's definitely just trying to grab some cash, man.
Okay, and then I think my last one is, now I think this is one that's more for TV. I believe that there was a rumor going around that they were going to do a Nightwing movie, and I think the gentleman from the guy that voices Invincible, Stephen, that they were looking at casting him as Nightwing.
That may work for me. Like,
okay,
there's really like nothing a part of Dick Grayson's character that would be indicatively white, and like he could change that. They could, because I've already been thinking about this anyway.
Okay.
Like for me, like Nightwing and Jason Todd and Tim Drake and even Damian Wayne, they could all probably be changed in race and still fundamentally being the same, especially Damian Wayne's, because he could be Asian or Middle Eastern depending on how you do race. And I feel like kind of this already works for me anyway, that I've probably already thought Dick Grayson was Asian in the first place.
Look at the one person that they should race swap and it will work. You're right. Is Raj Al Ghul. Like they raise Al Ghul. He should be black. He should be a straight African. If any point in this world a Lazarus Pit would exist, it would be in Africa. What race don't crack?
But he can also be like, he could pretty much be from anywhere that isn't traditionally European. He could be Middle Eastern. He could be Southeast Asian. He can be, Eastern Asian. He could be anything really. He could be freaking Pacific Islander, and I'd be like, okay, that works for me too.
anything but Liam Neeson.
Yeah, anything but Liam Neeson. Of course, they're gonna whitewash that guy and be like, oh, I'm racial. Like, no, you fucking are not. Get out of here.
But that's always even when I watch the animated series, I'm always like, why is Rage not black? Like you would think the guy that's been around forever, or even Vandal Savage.
Vandal Savage should be black.
Like the first human beings to walk this planet were black. How are these characters not black?
Yeah, Randall Savage should definitely be black. He is like part of the first group of human beings, and he's white. No, that doesn't make no damn sense.
Well, guys, I know it's going to be a sad moment here. We're going to end the show. I know every week everybody looks forward to this show, and it hurts them. We actually had one more segment we were going to do, but we're at 1 hour and 16. We're not going to keep you guys any longer. We're so glad and appreciative of you guys joining us, listening to us, talk our talk. Please comment. Please let us know how you feel about everything. And we can be totally off. We can be totally on. Maybe you hate it, Wokeman. Maybe you didn't like Lovecraft Woke Country. Let us know how you feel about it. We will address it. And even if you, again, we do this open challenge. Every week we're going to start doing it. If you disagree with us and you are just so adamant that we're missing a point, please let us know. We will pull you onto the show and record with us, and you can voice your grievance.
And we will tell you why you're wrong.
Exactly, 100%. Jarren had to go get a second shot, so he'll hopefully be a zombie for the next episode. Because that's what the shots do to you, according to everybody that I read on the internet. Gives you great 5K, 5G coverage, and makes you a zombie, evidently. So. But Jarren to be back next week with us, so we will enjoy that one. That's why we decided to sneak this all black episode in on your asses. While the white guy was away. Jarren, and now right. The white guy's away. Let's go black. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. As always, check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Facebook under Headcanon Circus. Also, I'm on Instagram under Headcanon Circus. We have Jason. You're on Instagram as
Attribute is Fire. But on Twitter as Rise November. I'll definitely tweet you back if you tweet at me.
Yes, for sure. I think I am Unsportsman Big J on Twitter when I both used to do nothing but sports only. So, and I just figured I'd keep the handle at this point in my life. So, but yeah, check us out. Please comment, respond, hit us up. Let us know what you think. Tell us that we suck at life, or tell us that we're great and wonderful human beings. And thank God someone spoke this truth into existence, whatever it may be. Also, let us know, was Gaia black from Planet from Captain Planet? I'm gonna go with she was black.
She was black.
I'm gonna go with that, but I need to know the answer because I think some people will be like,
look,
that melanin get kind of thin.
Goldberg, you black. All right, I don't care if they paint you white as white. You black if you voiced by Whoopi Goldberg. If you voiced by Keith David, you black too. Goliath, you black.
100%. If you don't like Keith David, and you can't get away with a voice like that. You can't get away with that. Like Keith David voice is the blackest thing on this planet, outside of maybe Morgan Freeman's. But guys, thank you guys for listening and watching. As always, we will see you all next week. Peace.